Say, Brandon, Val Kilmer was one of your favorite actors, right?
Yeah, he's actually my second favorite actor ever behind Al Pacino. So I was really, really sad to hear the news of his passing.
Yeah, very sad news. Well, what were your kind of favorite movies that he's been in?
I'm glad you asked, John. I actually have a list because I'm a nerd like that, especially when it comes to movies, even more so than NBA basketball. I am a huge movie nerd, and Val has so many that I love, but if I had to go with like my top five, my number five would be Top Secret, which is like an airplane Naked Gun style movie from the 80s. Highly recommend. Val sings in that one. He's like an Elvis kind of guy. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is my number four. Super underrated. Him and Robert Downey Jr. are hilarious in it. Number three, highly recommend. Real Genius, again from the 80s. Val Kilmer was actually hilarious. I know he's more known for drama and for action, but especially in the 80s, he had a lot of hilarious roles. Real Genius is one of those. Number two, Heat had my two favorite actors of all time, Al Pacino and Val Kilmer. And then my number one, easily one of my favorite performances of all time, Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday in Tombstone.
Well, I think with Val Kilmer's passing, maybe with some extra time between games, it is worth a movie watching marathon in his honor.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Welcome back to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, publisher of Daily Thunder, and I'll be your host today. Alongside me is Daily Thunder beat writer Brandon Rahbar. Brandon, how are you this Wednesday?
I am doing really, really well. I am looking forward to a late night tip in Oklahoma City. Thunder versus Pistons on ESPN. A little bummed that Cade Cunningham is doubtful for tonight, but I still expect the Thunder to go out there and roll into their 11th straight win tonight.
Well, we will talk about the game against Detroit tonight, but we did miss last week due to life outside of basketball, so we'll talk about the last 14 days of Thunder basketball, where the Thunder extended their win streak to 10 games. They are in the midst of one of the most dominant seasons in NBA history. SGA may have locked up the MVP, while Dort is pushing for that Defensive Player of the Year award. And the big question is, can the Thunder get to 70 wins? So we'll start with that 7-0 run over the last couple of weeks. They won they won games over 5 teams that are currently in the playoff or the play-in. And except for a close win on the road against the Clippers, the Thunder won every other game by double digits. And in fact, won 5 of 7 by 20 plus. Brandon, which wins in the past 2 weeks were the most impressive to you, and why?
Ooh, that is a good. They've had so many good ones. I tend to favor these ones that are, when the Thunder are down some players and all that. But so with that in mind, I'm going to go Thunder over Clippers. This Clippers team had been really, really hot coming into this game. They had won, I believe, 5 straight coming into that game, and it was in L.A. This was a game the Clippers absolutely wanted, and the Thunder were down J-Dub and Chet, and they roll into L.A. against the Clippers team that had all their guys. They had Harden, they had Kawhi, they had Powell, they had Zubac, and they go in, and the defense, even without Chet and J-Dub, was locked down against the Clippers. I was incredibly impressed by that win.
Yeah, that was a close, narrow 103-101 win, but it really did come down to the defense because neither team shot the ball well. The Thunder were 40% from the field and 34% from 3. The Clippers, 43% from the field and 31% from 3. But people talk a lot about how the Thunder have all these double-digit wins, but not that many games won in crunch time. But this was a close game throughout. The Clippers did have a double-digit lead in the first quarter, and the Thunder kind of quickly erased that lead. And from there on, it was a back-and-forth game. So this was a really impressive win as you look ahead to the playoffs of, can the Thunder win in the clutch?
Yeah, that was one of the things that we haven't seen from the Thunder this year. I think we all believed, obviously, that they can. Shea has been a great clutch time player. They just haven't been in this situation very much because they keep blowing teams out. Also, this could be a sneak peek to possibly a first-round matchup. The Clippers right now are in the play-in spot. They're in the number 8 spot. It looks like, I'm going to predict it's going to be like Grizzlies, Clippers, Mavs, and Kings in the play-in fighting for the 7 and 8 spots. So I think this could be a preview. And for the Thunder to go in there on a night they weren't shooting well, on a night without J-Dub, without Chet, in L.A., with the Clippers fully healthy, to win in a clutch time situation when they were down double digits, I think it bodes very well for a possible first-round matchup, which, by the way, the Clippers, the Thunder obviously having all these draft picks from the Clippers for the foreseeable future, and I think this was a draft pick that everybody thought, including myself, was going to be possibly a lottery pick when the news came down that Kawhi was going to miss so much of the time and Paul George was leaving L.A. They've been really impressive, especially since Kawhi has been back and looking like Kawhi. So just going back to this being a really, really impressive showing from the Thunder, because this Clippers team is much better than people expected.
Well, on that, and as you think about a potential playoff matchup, the Thunder did sweep the season series with the Clippers. They went 4-0. So probably bodes well for the Thunder in a matchup against the Clippers. Now, they did have a nice win. The Thunder had a nice win over the Bulls. That pushed their record against the Eastern Conference to 28-1, which is the most wins ever by a team against another conference. And there is one game remaining against an Eastern Conference opponent tonight in Detroit, as we previewed. But this gaudy record of 28-1 and with a one loss in a nail-biter against the Cavs, is that more a product of the East not being on the same level as the West, or is it the Thunder are really just that?
I think it's just the Thunder are really that good, because obviously the East is not as deep as the West is, but nobody else is winning this many games against the East. And the East still has really good teams. I mean, the Celtics are the reigning champs. The Thunder swept them. The Cavs, I mean, they're going to win, 65 games. And the Thunder split with them, and their only loss was to the Cavs in Cleveland. And the Thunder didn't have Chet for that game. And it was a back-and-forth close game. I mean, you can look at the Bucks, the Pacers. The East has some really, really good teams. So, and I think it also speaks to the fact that no matter who they're playing, the Thunder are up for every single game. I mean, they could take some games off here and there, especially against the Eastern Conference, especially, nights on the road when they're down some players, but this Thunder team just doesn't do that. So I think it speaks to the night in and night out consistency of the Thunder, and then just how good the Thunder is regardless of opponent. Yeah, the East is not as bad, especially when it comes to like the top 5 or 6 as they've been. I think they're a little bit top heavy. So yeah, this is just a really, really impressive mark from the Thunder.
And you also mentioned how you enjoy those games where maybe there are some people out and you get to see players who don't get as many minutes really showcase their talents. There was one such game. It was the 133-100 win over the 76ers. The Thunder sat SGA, Dort, Hart, and J-Dub. And in that game, you had the bench players rise to the occasion. Wiggins had a great game, and J. Will got yet another triple-double with 19 points, 17 rebounds, and 11 assists. So how did that one feel?
Yeah, that one was a lot of fun. To see J. Will, for the second time this season, got extended minutes, and the second time this season gets a triple-double. He broke his career high in both points and rebounds. It's fun to see J. Will kind of as this offensive hub and kind of playing this Jokic role and, playmaking as the Thunder's number 3 center, by the way. Like, he's technically a third-string guy. Like, he gets minutes because he's too good to not get minutes. And he would be getting minutes for pretty much any team. The Thunder are just that deep where he's their number 3 center. To see him get triple-doubles like this, just so much fun. The players love it. His teammates love it. But then also, seeing Aaron Wiggins go for another 26 in extended minutes. Isaiah Joe go for 21. Kenrich Williams, who's been on fire, he's shooting over 40% from three now, go for 13. Brandon Carlson going for 16. Even Dylan Jones got into double digits on this one. Chet played as well, only 23 minutes, but he had 19 points. The 76ers are just kind of handing over wins on a silver platter right now, honestly, to the detriment of the Thunder. But I think it just speaks once again to the Thunder's depth that they can go out there sitting most of their starters and get a 33-point win, regardless of opponent.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way that I feel about this. Granted, the 76ers, they don't want to be winning games right now. They want to make sure they retain that pick that they could have to turn over to the Thunder, as we talked about in the last podcast. And they've been suffering from pretty significant injuries. But a lot of these guys, and we've talked about it, like when you aren't a regular starter and you're not getting regular minutes, when you have an opportunity, you're going to try hard, right? Like these guys are going to go out there and give a solid effort. And you look at the Thunder's lineup, where you've got a starting lineup of Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, Dylan Jones, Jay Will, and Chet Holmgren. Like there's some nice players in there, but 33-point win with all the starters out except for Chet Holmgren, there's some impressiveness to that.
Yeah, I mean, this 76ers team, like, again, within context, they are handing over wins at a process 2.0 rate right now. That said, Quentin Grimes has been on a heater, and they've been at least somewhat competitive with a lot of teams' starting units, a lot of playoff teams' starting units. They really should have beat the Rockets a couple of weeks ago, but they pulled out an ultimate tank job there at the end, and the Rockets got a win, but the Rockets were playing all their guys. I mean, they've been somewhat competitive with the Knicks starting unit. So despite the fact that this is the 76ers without all their guys, this is the Thunder's second, third, and fourth stringers, and they put up a 33-point win. So regardless, that's still impressive.
Well, there are 7 games left, and at this point, the Thunder are on pace to have one of the best regular seasons in NBA history. We already know the team is the youngest team to ever hit 60 wins, and a 70-win season is still in play. So let's start with that. Do you think we'll see the team rest players strategically, and how much do you think the team wants to hit that 70-win mark?
Okay, so here's the thing. I truly believe that the Thunder are focused on winning a championship and the playoffs and prioritizing, health going into the playoffs, obviously. But I think that they also want to prioritize still being in a rhythm and implementing Chet, still getting his legs underneath him and getting his cardio back and seeing more and more the double bigs. And look, you can't rest them too far before the playoffs. Like you can't sit SGA and Dub and Dort and all these guys right now because they're also going to get about a week off with the play-in and all that goes on. I think that as long as 70 wins is in play, like they might rest a guy or two here and there, but especially, tonight against the Pistons, the guys are going to play. I think that we'll see the guys play Friday night against the Rockets, and then you got a doubleheader against the Lakers. If the Thunder play their guys in those games, which I think that they will, and they win those games, 70 wins is on the table. The number 1 overall seed to have home court advantage throughout the playoffs is on the table. I think that you'll see this balance probably of going for it, but also, resting guys if they need resting. Like, if you got kind of like little bruises and nicks and injuries and things like that, like kind of strategic rest. But the last 3 games are the Suns, the Pelicans, and the Jazz, and they will just hand you wins. They're going to give over those wins. The Suns are interesting because they don't have their draft pick. Maybe they'll try for, that number 10 play-in spot if they're still in range. It's the second night of a back-to-back, so maybe the Thunder rest some guys there. Katie probably not playing, but you still got Booker, so that one could be interesting. I think the Thunder will kind of low-key go for 70 wins. That's historic. That's a pretty big, bow to put on this season. You're making history. You would be one of 3 teams in NBA history to get to 70 wins. So I think they'll kind of low-key go for it while strategically resting guys here and there.
Well, let's say they do continue the streak. They beat Detroit, Houston, the Lakers in those two games, and then the Suns. And they've got the final two games are against Utah and the Pelicans. Teams that the Thunder should win even if their starters aren't playing. But if anybody in the starting lineup plays, you really do increase your odds of taking those. With the potential, though, of resting SGA, J-Dub, Chet, Hart, all those guys headed into the playoffs, but 70 wins on the line, would you play your starters to get those wins?
Would I if it was me?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so I would go for 70 wins. I would. I think that's historic, and I think the fact that the Thunder are going to have all this rest after the regular season. I would probably not play all my guys against the Pelicans and Jazz, though, because I think that they will give you wins. I think you can play your kind of backup guys in those, because the Thunder's backup guys are guys like Casey Wallace, and, you can play Alex Caruso. You can play Aaron Wiggins, I think, and win those. It's a little risky because, maybe the Jazz will play like Lauri Markkanen. Maybe John Collins plays or Sexton plays or those guys plays. I can't imagine it, though, because they firmly want Cooper Flagg. And if it's close between them and the Pelicans and the Wizards and the Hornets for increasing those odds, like staying top 3 in those odds, I think the Pelicans and Jazz will give you those wins, and you can play your kind of B lineup. So if it's me, I probably play my starters and all my guys throughout, all the way through at least the Suns, and then probably play my backup guys versus the Pelicans and Jazz.
Well, whether the Thunder hit 70 wins or not, this has been a dominant, and I mean a dominant season. If the Thunder finish +6 in margin over these final 7 games, it will break the all-time record for scoring differential in a season. That record is held by the Lakers currently from the 71-72 season, and they had a 12.28 differential. In net rating, the Thunder currently have a +13.1 net rating. The best season of all time is the Bulls in 95-96, and that team won 72 games, won a title, and finished with a +13.4 net rating. So with a strong finish to the season, the Thunder could break that record. And kind of finally and relatedly, Oklahoma City has a SRS rating of 13.31, which many people kind of view that SRS rating as the gold standard for a team's dominance. A 13.31 SRS rating would easily be the best of all time. The best one currently is 11.92, held by the 70-71 Bucks, who went 66-16 and won a championship. The 95-96 Bulls, maybe the best NBA team of all time, had an SRS rating of 11.8. So these historic numbers imply that this team should win the finals. Do you think that puts sort of added pressure on the team, or as a fan, that where you're watching this team, by every single metric, they are on pace to have maybe one of the most dominant statistical seasons of all time? And they got to go prove it in the playoffs. And so really anything less than a championship would be a disappointment.
Yeah, when you look at all these teams throughout history who have done what the Thunder are doing, like all the teams that they're mentioned with when it comes to net rating, margin of victory, SRS, like all these things, the record, all these teams have won championships. Now, obviously the Thunder have a caveat, whereas, they're the youngest team within all these teams, and they have the least amount of playoff experience. And those are two things that obviously historically you need to win a championship. Well, this Thunder team has not at all been a team that goes by historical markers. Like, they keep being the youngest to do this, the youngest to do that. And, so on one side of the coin, it would be an outlier if the Thunder go out and win a championship because of their youth and their playoff inexperience relative to former champions. On the other side of that coin, it would be an outlier if the Thunder don't win a championship, given their dominance this season. So, they're going to be an outlier one way or another. is what it comes down to. My take is the Thunder are the best team in the NBA. And if they go through the playoffs healthy, I think that they are easily the best team in the West. Obviously, any given matchup, any given series, a team can get hot, a team can get cold in certain matchups, or better or worse for certain teams. The Thunder seem to be kind of matchup proof. But, LeBron and Luka, high upside, obviously. Curry and Butler, high upside. And then Jokic and the Nuggets are always an X factor. The Wolves have been really, really good lately. All that said, I think the Thunder are clearly the best team in the West. And I think the Celtics and Cavs, obviously head of the class in the East. I got to favor the Celtics still. I think it's the Thunder and the Celtics. I thought that preseason. I still think that more so than ever. In that series, I guess you could say it's a coin flip based on the fact that I think the Thunder are the best team, but the Celtics had the championship experience. So yeah, I think that the Thunder are a championship finals winning quality team. Does that mean that they'll win the championship? No, but I think that they're right there.
Well, maybe I'll put it this way. To the fans who are wondering, how excited should they be for the playoffs and how much should they believe that this team is headed to the finals? Would you guide that fan to be A, cautiously optimistic, or B, no, this team is that good and you don't need to have those doubts?
Somewhere in between. I do think...
Wait, the right defense.
Okay, I would lean more towards the latter, though. This team is that good. This team is good enough to go out and win a championship. I think that they are the best team in the NBA. I do. But it's hard to win a championship. Like for any team, no matter what team, like it takes a little bit of luck, and it takes it takes a great run in a stacked West against some great players and some great teams, and it will take a great series against either the Celtics or the champs and really, really deep and talented, or against the Cavs. But the Thunder, I think, are the best team. I do think that, and the numbers play it out that way. They've been the best team this season. So I would say this team can go out and win a championship. But yeah, I would also, put a little hint of cautious optimism in there as well, just because it's really, really hard.
Yeah, I guess I agree with that. Like anything can happen, but what I keep telling myself, because, it's tough. We saw the Thunder after the Harden year, had one of its best seasons of all times. And it really looked like it was a finals favorite. And you had Russ get injured, and things happen, right, that are unpredictable. And there's always that potential for disappointment. But truly, this team has done things that no other NBA team has ever done before. And the way that they're winning games, their dominance in games, how good they are both offensively and defensively. Really, if you don't have high expectations for this team, then you're doubting something without any reason to doubt, because you have to also layer in the fact that this team has barely been healthy for the season. The big chunk of the season didn't have Chet. J-Dub has missed a bunch of games. Hart has missed a bunch of games. And yet the Thunder is still rolled to this kind of record, being 63-12 at this point, and currently hold the highest SRS rating of all time. So I would say you should be optimistic. You should be expecting this team to win, because they really are truly that good.
Yeah, I think that if you look at it from an objective outsider point of view, like if you weren't covering the Thunder on a day-to-day basis or a Thunder fan, and you just looked at what this team is doing, the fact that they have the likely MVP who is having a historical season, dominance. They have another all-star in J-Dub. They have another all-star talent in Chet, who was likely headed for an all-star had he stayed healthy. You have all these guys like Hartenstein and Caruso and Dort, who are dominant defensively but also bring it offensively, and these great role players in Cason Wallace and Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe, and they're so deep, and you see the record, you see the margin of victory. If you were to just look at the stats and facts and records objectively, you would say this team is by far the favorite to win the finals this year. Like, you would choose them over any other team. The only reason there's like a hint of being skeptical or being, I guess I would say, hesitant is if you're a Thunder fan, you're like, my team can't be that dominant. You know what I mean? Like you just don't. You look at it through your own fan eyes, and you're just like, well, surely, I mean, they can't be that good. Like they shouldn't be that big a favorite just because it's your own team. But from an outsider, objective perspective, they are that good.
100%. Well, let's move on from team accolades to some individual accolades. Mark Daigneault won Western Conference Coach of the Month for the third time. Now, despite this gaudy record and all the things the team has done this year, Vegas puts Mark behind other coaches for Coach of the Year. Is him being the reigning Coach of the Year holding him back from maybe having greater odds of winning Coach of the Year? Is it the fact that the Cavs kind of maybe came out of nowhere to have such a dominant and great season? What do you think is happening here where Mark's not getting as much discussion for Coach of the Year?
Well, it's absolutely because he won Coach of the Year last year. You just don't see a Coach of the Year in back-to-back years because it's kind of like, okay, well, you already did it last year. But you don't typically see a team that won 57 games. So the Thunder go from out of the playoffs to the number one seed, and now they're going from the number one seed to a historical record. Like you're going from 57 wins to probably another double-digit increase in wins. So what Mark has done has been remarkable, and he's won 3 out of 5 Western Conference Coach of the Month awards for good reason. But, it would be really, really tough to beat, JB Bickerstaff and the huge increase that we've seen from the Pistons, like to go from 14 wins to like the number 5 seed right now in the East. And then, what Kenny Atkinson has done with the Cavs, kind of taking the same team that they had last year to the number 1 seed in the East. So that's not at all to diminish what Mark has done. But, to win back-to-back Coach of the Year, like, even though what he's doing is unprecedented and incredibly impressive, they're just not going to give a coach back-to-back Coach of the Years.
So SGA also won Western Conference Player of the Month for the third time. And ESPN just published their latest MVP straw poll. SGA took 77 of the 100 available first-place votes. So despite Jokic's 61-point performance last night in a loss, is the MVP race over?
It should be. I always worry about like these kind of outlier games from Jokic. First of all, Jokic is incredible. So that's like an obvious statement, but I feel like I need to, preface what I'm going to say with that. Jokic is incredible, and he's been incredible, and he'll remain incredible. But, he's kind of had these 2 big boosts with these 2 huge games, like the 40-20-20 game and that overtime win against the Suns, and now this, 60-point triple-double in this double overtime loss. I didn't do that on purpose. Loss against the Timberwolves. So, he might get a little boost there. And if he has another kind of like crazy performance down the stretch, maybe he gets boosted again. But Jokic has missed a stretch here with injury, and SGA just continues to dominate. And the thing is, I just think that the gap between the Thunder and the Nuggets is too large. Like, I don't think it can be ignored. Like, they are both having incredible seasons. Like, historical seasons. Shea's having one of the greatest guard seasons of all time, and he's having a 2-way elite impact offensively and defensively. Jokic is having one of the greatest offensive seasons of all time, but there's obviously a weakness there with the defense. The Nuggets have a below average defense, and he's the defensive anchor. And the gap, I just can't get over the gap, and I think that's what's going to win Shea the MVP. I mean, Shea's going to win the MVP because he deserves MVP. He's going to lead the league in scoring. He's going to be one of the league leaders in stocks when it comes to steals and blocks put together. His efficiency, his playmaking, his overall game, leading the youngest team in the NBA to possibly 70 or near 70 wins, and having this huge gap between 1 and 2 in the West. And doing this with, as you mentioned earlier, Chet missing half the season, Hartenstein, Caruso, J-Dub, missing huge chunks of the season. The one constant all season has been SGA. He is, I believe, the deserving MVP. Jokic has had an incredible season, but I think that the story of this season is the Thunder and SGA leading this Thunder team.
Okay, well, we'll insert that. It's over Vince Carter gif into the podcast right here at this moment. Well, the last thing I want to mention about awards is Defensive Player of the Year. So Dort started to get a little bit more buzz as a potential Defensive Player of the Year award winner. How do you feel about that?
I think he is deserving. I think that, with Wemby no longer qualifying, obviously, and unfortunately, and then, the Grizzlies have fallen off, so I don't think it's Jaren Jackson Jr. The Cavs have had a bit of a fall off, so Evan Mobley, I think, is deserving. This Draymond Green stuff, look, Draymond Green is a great defender, but it is wild to me that he kind of came out of nowhere because he promoted himself on his podcast. And then, when that released, all of a sudden, he's the leader in Defensive Player of the Year odds. Just absolutely wild to me. Look, this Thunder defense is historically elite. And Lou Dort takes the toughest assignment every single night. You could say that, it's a team effort, which it absolutely is. I mean, you have Dort and J-Dub and Caruso and Chet and Hartenstein. You have Shea, you have Case and Wallace. But Lou takes the toughest assignment every night. And if you look at what he's doing to the opposing team's best scorer each and every night, it's pretty ridiculous. So I know that they usually give it to a big, but in a year where Wemby doesn't qualify, where Chet doesn't qualify, where the Grizzlies are, on a downturn, so, Jaren Jackson Jr., I don't think it's going to win anymore. I think Mobley is a deserving candidate. I just don't think the Warriors, where they're going to finish record-wise and where Draymond's stats are going to be and where the Warriors' defensive rating as a team is going to be, I just think I would favor Lou Dort or Evan Mobley over Draymond.
Well, Shea currently has the 6th best odds to win Defensive Player of the Year right now. Do you think there's a potential that Shea steals some votes from Dort?
I do think so. I think it helps that Shea himself has talked about it, saying whatever, score or rank I have, give that to Lou Dort. I think that helps, putting that out there. And I think that there has been over the past few days, there's been this kind of social media buzz, and we've seen now Brian Windhorst and Tim McMahon talk about it. We've seen Bill Simmons and Zach Lowe talk about it, both in podcasts released today. They're considering Lou Dort for Defensive Player of the Year, so he does have a little bit of buzz and momentum, and I think that helps, and at the right time. I would vote for Lou Dort if I had a vote, and it's not just because I cover the Thunder. I think when you look at the season again, the story has been the Thunder, and SGA and the Thunder defense is why they're possibly going to win 70 games. And Lou Dort has been the head of the defense. I know you don't usually give it to guards, but if you can give it to Marcus Smart in a year where there's no clear front runner for Defensive Player of the Year, why not give it to the best defender on a historically elite defense?
Yeah, why not give it to Dort? That's the selling point. No, I completely agree. I mean, one thing that gets overshadowed or maybe inhibits Dort's candidacy is the stats, right? Because the team as a whole is so good defensively, but there is no better lockdown perimeter defender than one Lou Dort. So let's look at playoff scenarios now. The Thunder are locked into number 1. They've been locked into the number 1 seed for quite some time now. And, the play-in spots are going to include 4 of the Suns, Kings, Mavs, Clippers, Wolves, Grizzlies, or Warriors. I think you previewed this more at the top, but say again, who do you think falls to those 7 to 10 spots in the play-in?
When you look at the schedule and you look at how teams are playing right now, I think the Wolves and Warriors will end up in the top 6. I think that the 7 to 10 is going to be the Grizzlies, the Clippers, the Mavs, and the Kings. Yes. Sorry. Yes, those 4. There is a possibility that the Clippers could jump into the top 6. They've been playing really, really well, and they have a, kind of middle-of-the-road remaining schedule. But, yeah, I think it's going to be the Grizzlies, Clippers, Mavs, and Kings.
And of those potential play-in teams, who do you least want to see in the first round if you're the Thunder?
The Clippers. The way that Kawhi has been playing recently, he has looked not quite like, top 5 player in the league or top 3 player in the league, Kawhi, like he did, a few years ago. But he has looked really, really good lately. James Harden has been great. Norman Powell has been a great scorer. And then you got Zubac. And then you have some, good defenders and role players and Chris Dunn and Derek Jones Jr. and Bogdanovich for some scoring off the bench. So I would easily say of those 4, the Clippers present, the toughest matchup. Obviously, the Grizzlies have been a top 3 seed a lot of the season. They have fallen off lately. So they would be next, but I wouldn't, fear the Grizzlies as much as the Clippers.
And who do you most want to see if you're the Thunder?
I mean, I would have to say, take your choice between the Kings or, the Mavs without Kyrie. I guess the Mavs without Kyrie still present issues because they have so much size with Anthony Davis, who, if he's healthy, is still, a great top 10 player. And then you got Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. They just don't have the playmakers. They just don't have the guards. They just don't have, the defender to put on SGA. But they do have MJ Washington. So that would be the biggest X factor. No, I just don't think that either one of those teams would present enough of a challenge with the Mavs missing Kyrie Irving. And look, the Thunder now have Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein together. So the size issue that we saw last year with the Mavs isn't the same as this year. And I know the Thunder lost some games to the Mavs, but every single game that the Thunder lost to the Mavs, they didn't have either Chet nor Hartenstein. So you can't take anything from those games because they didn't have their bigs. So I think either way, I guess I would go with the Kings only because the Thunder will score at will against the Kings.
Well, and really maybe impressive that the Mavs are, I'd say, likely to make the play-in with all the injuries they had with the trade of Luka to finish out and eke out the spot between the Kings, or maybe over the Kings, but also over the Suns, who have been an absolute disaster. Not a bad way for Mavs fans to finish, I guess, this season where they make the play-in, but hopefully and likely they get bounced pretty quickly. But what a disaster in Phoenix, right?
I think of all the teams this season, and obviously there's a lot of disappointing seasons out there between the 76ers, but look, the 76ers have had real injuries, and that's been, their issue. The Mavs obviously, take the cake with the Luka AD trade. But the Suns should not be fighting for the number 10 play-in spot. I guess I just look at it from the standpoint of, for most of the season, they've had their main 3 guys healthy. Yeah, Bill's missed some games here and there. KD is injured right now, and he's missed some games. But I just look at, their future and their present, and I don't know, what they can do. At least with, the Mavs, you can say, okay, once they get healthy next year and the year after that, they'll be a playoff team. They'll be possibly a contender when fully healthy. The 76ers, you can talk yourself into, okay, Maxey, he's young, and they got Jared McCain, and maybe you get a fully healthy season of Embiid and Paul George. But the Suns, where's the future and where's the present? They sold the future to win right now, and they've been mostly healthy, and they might not make the top 10. So, and they don't even have their own draft pick this year. That's been a disaster for Phoenix this year.
100%. Well, let's look ahead to the next 7 days. Tonight, as you mentioned, we have Detroit. It's in a game that is at home, and it was flexed to ESPN, so it's a later start at 8:30. The latest injury report you noted has Cade out for Detroit. They're also missing several players who are out due to suspension from that fight that happened in the Pistons-Wolves game. Thunder will have a couple of guys out. Caruso and Jay Will are questionable. Wiggins and Oos are both out. So I imagine it looks like Oklahoma City's guys are going to play, generally speaking, except for the guys who are hurt. Detroit's going to be missing some guys. But does this game even matter to Detroit? They're kind of locked into that. They're going to be in the top 6 in the East regardless, right?
Yeah, they're going to be in the top 6 in the East regardless. I guess they could still be fighting for playoff positioning and seeding. But without Cade being doubtful, and without Isaiah Stewart and Sasser and Holland going up against this Thunder team that's going to have all their starters tonight, and it's at home, like, it is really, really hard for me to find a scenario where the Thunder lose this game. Like, I just don't. It would take just a scenario where the Thunder just can't hit anything at all, and the Pistons can't miss anything at all, and I just don't see it happening tonight. This is a game. It's a late tip on ESPN, so I wish Cade was playing so we could see SGA and Cade. But on the same token, if you're the Thunder and you're going for 70 wins and the number one overall seed and trying to make history, I guess you can't complain too much about, having a game that you should take pretty easily on ESPN.
Well, the next 3 games, you can't say the same thing about. Houston, currently a number 2 team in the West, and they seem like they're in a good spot to take that number 2 seed. They're up 2 games over the Nuggets right now. And then you got that, I wouldn't say back-to-back because there's a day in between, but the Lakers and then the Lakers. So those 3 games are potentially tough games, and to what we were talking about, that's chase for 70 wins. You get through those 3 games, you're going to feel pretty good about your odds or the potential of hitting 70 wins. So how do you see those next 3 games playing out?
Yeah, I'm just fascinated by whether the Thunder play all their guys, if they rest any of their guys, because, like I said, the Pistons without Cade tonight, and then the Suns likely without KD, and then the Jazz and Pelicans. You feel like those are all probable wins. So if you're looking at any losses for the rest of the season, it's this 3-game stretch, Rockets on the road, and then doubleheader in OKC versus the Lakers. If the Thunder play their guys, I think that they, even though it's a tough matchup in Houston and their defense is going to be great, I like the Thunder in Houston. And then I am just fascinated by this Lakers matchup because it'll be the first time, obviously, the Thunder see Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves together. Obviously, the offensive upside is through the roof with those 3 guys, but then defensively, they have issues, and then they have a real sore spot at center and the big position. So if the Thunder do play Chet and Hartenstein in both of those games, and they play their guys, I like their chances. And if they win all 3 of those games, the talk of 70 wins and a historic season is going to go through the roof. And it will be, I would say, near impossible to shut down the SGA for MVP narrative if 70 wins is on the table.
Well, a lot to watch for over the next week, and that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, host of the podcast, and he's Brandon Rahbar, Daily Thunder beat writer. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to the Daily Thunder podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, do us a favor and leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back in your feed next week to close out the regular season, so stay tuned.